let's get into it. The first thing that I have written here is the only one, which I read in one of your pieces, and I just kind of want to explore that within the context of brand and art and kind of athletes.
Okay. When that, I think I know what you mean, but I will preface this by saying that whatever question you have that's related to one of my writings, you'll have to fill me in on the context because I don't remember anything that I write. And I get a lot of questions about my writings, and it is assumed from the question that I'll know exactly what they're talking about, and I
Right.
don't. So just give me some context, if you would.
Yeah, so I read that this idea of the only one, like places like Augusta National and people like
Yes,
Tiger Woods
yes, yes,
are one and of their own, and they're completely unique to themselves. And I see this
yes,
parallel
that's right.
also in brand. Like Apple is the only one. There is no other,
Yes, that's
right?
correct.
And
Yes,
I would
yes.
just like to explore this idea and what this means and how people can overcome this obsession with competition and get to this place of trying to be the only one.
And I think it's about examination. If you look at things from very logical and fresh perspective, without the sort of conditioning that we are subject to in this society. If you look at competition, I find competition to be a very meager approach to things. Because when you look at things from the standpoint of competition, essentially the question that you are asking is, how is it that I can better another? And that would be fine if bettering another allowed you to reach to an ultimate possibility. But I don't think it does. Bettering another, that question essentially just allows you to strive to get 1 inch better than somebody else. And once that 1 inch is accomplished, the game's over. And that I find to be very boring and uninspiring. I mean, I don't really care who wins, to be honest with you. If you win by 30, then I'm interested. If you win every single time, then I'm interested. If you're the best that history's ever seen, then I'm interested. But if you look on the PGA Tour, every single week a new guy wins, I find that boring. Because what that tells me is that the PGA Tour players have not differentiated themselves from one another. They've become one another, which is typical in the setting of professional athletes, and also in the setting of business. Whatever environment or whatever petri dish that you are in, you will drift towards the mean. You will conglomerate towards an accepted reality. Differentiation is very rare. Human beings become their environment. So I don't think that it's a coincidence that when Tiger was at his peak, he did everything alone. It wasn't a coincidence that he would come out to play practice rounds, at the break of dawn when no one was around, and he would leave, and nobody would ever see him. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he changed his shoes in the parking lot, or he wouldn't stick around to socialize, and he would go to the far off part of the range. Those are not coincidences. The people who truly become great generally tend to be loners. They generally tend to walk a very solitary path. So the obsession with being better, I think, is it's very low level. I think better and best is not as inspiring as being the only. And the reason that Tiger was, to use an example of Tiger, the reason that Tiger is hailed even to this day, given despite the fact that he's dropped so many points in the rankings, it must be 700 or something, I'm not sure, but in that area, it isn't because he was better. It was because he was the only. So people gravitate, people are drawn to, people are mesmerized, not by better, but by the only.
Is that learned or is that innate?
I mean, I think DNA is DNA, and how someone's natural bent towards thinking a particular way tends to be a DNA, but the DNA to change is also DNA. So, the learned versus innate thing, I don't know if that question really goes anywhere. The bottom line is, do you want to know the truth or do you not? And whether you were born thinking that way or you learned to think that way doesn't really matter.
Now, I want to avoid the prescriptions. I really do. But if you were to look at the world of business and look at the world of brand, there's a lot of competition, obviously. What would you say to those new brands and to the existing brands and people who are obviously working within those companies to become the only in their respective category, if there exists such a thing after being the only?
The most important thing with everything, everyone begins in the wrong place. And everyone begins with, what should I do? Everyone begins with, what advice can you give me? And that's really a disingenuous place to begin. The place to begin always is, where do you want to go? That is the number one thing to begin with, because I could shower all kinds of advice and insights onto a particular human being day and night. But if that isn't where he wants to go, then it is a mere curiosity. I'm just wasting my time. So it isn't that question that you ask is a distant second. The one question that would be actually more applicable and more effective and more sincere would be to say, who do you really want to be? That's what you must examine. And we live in a world where it's all about who you should be. And I don't care about who you should be, because I don't care about the world. I don't care about society. I don't care about prescriptions. I don't care about should. It is the reality of what sort of heart beats within you, not motivation, not work till you drop, not all this nonsense. It is just sit with yourself and discover no good, no bad, no right, no wrong. Just be honest with yourself, and who is it that I want to be? That's where everything begins.
Is that a process of literally just sitting on your own and asking yourself these questions?
Well, yeah, but even in that question, there's a prescription, because even in that question,
right.
they're asking, so should one sit there and ask him? No, it's almost like everyone needs to be shaken out of prescription land, right? And just listen to my words. Don't turn them into a prescription. Look, who do you want to be? There's no what room should I sit in? Should I ask it out loud? That we're back to the prescriptions again. That's the default. Is, well, how should I ask? As soon as you ask for prescription, you'll begin to follow prescriptions. As soon as you begin to follow prescriptions, you will not be doing it genuinely.
Okay. Yeah, it's deeply ingrained into.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As I said, you become your environment. Absolutely.
Okay, so within the people who become the only one, or brands that become the only one, is something that I have seen, which I think in your writing is what you have touched on in terms of kind of what I have seen, which is this idea of seriousness. And what do you mean by seriousness? And what does that mean to you? How does that manifest?
Whether it's in relationships, whether it's in business, whether it's in sports, whether it's in any domain, a fundamental truth about human beings is this: human beings get away with that which they can get away with. And wherever they don't have to own up to something, they won't own up to it. And it's very important for me to say at this juncture, having said that it isn't about owning up to it. It isn't about the fact that you should own up to it, or it's wrong that you didn't own up to it. That has nothing to do with anything. There's no right or wrong here. There's no morality, right? It's all about effects. Now, the effect of getting away with what you can get away with and not owning up to anything, the effect of that, the natural consequence of that, is that things begin to fall apart. When things begin to fall apart, then one begins to then feel the effects of the thing having fallen apart, and that forces him to then get more and more serious. So it isn't until one gets deadly serious and that he's all in, that he genuinely wants to, address the issues or whatever it may be, that things really get going. Everything else is just sort of it's going through the motions. It really isn't genuine, and it's going through the motions because there really is no impetus to change. So man doesn't change until he's on the edge of a cliff with a tiger chasing him. That's just his nature.
And now, once that happens and you get serious, is when you can find the truth. Is that right?
Yes. When you're serious about something, then you tend to exhibit the behavior naturally, not by behavior modification, but naturally, to exhaust all options because you feel like you have no choice.
Now, is that necessarily when you reach this point of everything falling down? I can understand this in the context of like the individual life. I've even seen it in my own life where, you, as you said, you're up against the cliff, right? And you're staring death or whatever it is in the face. And this is not something that most people want to happen. It's just a circumstance that makes them feel this sense of seriousness, and then they have to discover the truth. It is absolutely necessary, right? By definition. Now,
yeah, I know what you're asking. I know what basically you're saying, does everything have to fall apart? Well, it isn't. Exactly. It isn't about everything. It is what it's about is it has to fall apart enough for it to have an impact upon you, and so there's always a threshold, and whatever that threshold is, it is. However high or low it is, it is. So there is a threshold beyond which it is no longer acceptable. So whenever that threshold is reached, that could be called everything, that could be called a little bit of a thing, that could be called a medium number of things. It doesn't matter. Once one's threshold of acceptability is reached, then he tends to take stock.
And obviously the same for business and brand, because these are just kind of abstractions of the individual self.
Yeah, the DNA of a brand is the DNA of the individual who begins the brand.
Right. What is a brand to you? What is a great brand to you, and what is a bad brand to you?
Honestly, I'm not a business guy. I've never really thought in terms of business terms with anything. I look at things from a human perspective. So I don't really spend much time thinking about that because it doesn't interest me. I will only say that a human being who does not compromise in whatever his vision is, regardless of what the world may think, I think that person is going to create probably the ultimate brand.
Now, this idea of struggle versus, success, and with this like obsession with hard work and all this effort, which I have sort of subscribed to be honest, because perhaps I've been swimming in the water and not realizing that I'm swimming, so to speak. What is that, and why is there this obsession, in your opinion, with so much effort and so much hard work, which I guess in a way harkens back to this idea of competition.
Because if you can't offer the truth, you begin to offer surrogates for the truth. So if the truth is, 5 inches from you, but you don't know what it is, then the only thing that you can offer is work hard to get there. So if all you have is work hard to get there, then you will beat that drum because it's all you got. So hard work is primarily an anxiety. Hard work is done primarily because one is afraid that if they don't work hard enough, then the next guy who's working harder might get what they want. So I think hard work is totally unnecessary. Now, when one is driven towards something, when one has a vision for something, when they can't not have it, they will do what needs to be done. But that isn't hard work. It isn't. I mean, they may bleed, they may sweat, but it isn't done for its sake. I mean, those are natural consequences of. They aren't a tool to get there. I'm not going to go spend 8 hours a day beating golf balls. That's stupid. That's all. Most golfers do that, and it's a waste of time. So it fundamentally, it isn't about working hard. It's about learning. So the truth always takes less time. So for me, it is like I said, everything is so completely opposite of what society says. Society just lies through its teeth because it has nothing else to offer. So it really, I'm not looking for how I can do the most. I want to know how can I do the absolute least and get the most.
Which is sort of nature itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Gravity doesn't work hard.
Right. What have you learned from nature?
That it's peaceful and that it never struggles.
Is that the ideal that you've seen in the truth?
The beauty of the truth is it's never wrong. There's no possibility of wrongness. It's reliable. It's the only thing that one can rest their entire life on. It is not shifting sand.
Ooh, it's hard for me to hear these things and not ask for prescriptions. It's so deeply ingrained for me to want to ask, how do you do this or how do you do that?
And it is very important to understand that my approach to introducing the idea of no prescriptions is not a prescription in itself. So it is not that make sure that you don't have a prescription. That isn't the point. The point is to understand why. The point is to understand that when you ask the how, when you ask someone to prescribe you the 5-step plan and the seven slide, PowerPoint presentation, right? And the 3 Ds and the 4 Cs and all this just garbage. What happens? What is the effect? What is the effect? The effect is you will go down the road of following and then checking to see if you were doing it correctly. And when it doesn't work, you will come back and say, well, did I not do it correctly? And then the person will say, yes, it wasn't quite correct. And then you'll go back and modify it. And you'll say, well, that's maybe good, maybe not. And forever and ever and ever and ever, you will be lost in the how. You will never, ever get to the there.
What are the interferences?
Which is precisely where everyone is. Look at where everyone is in spirituality. Meditating for, 100 years, and what do they have? Nothing. They have nothing. They do mindfulness and go to these conferences on mindfulness and wear lanyards and say, yes, sir, and hire these gurus. and get a meditation instructor. It's a joke. The meditation instructor is nowhere. The guru is nowhere. No one is anywhere. They've just signed a contract for a lifelong slavery to following prescriptions.
Which is an ordinary life.
It's a miserable life, absolutely.
Sure. So what in terms of interferences, if we want to get back to this idea of sort of nature and the laws of physics, right? Friction is something that it holds people back, obviously, or holds an object back. What are the interferences that you have come to see and learn through your experience?
Prescription is one of the largest interferences. Belief is another interference. Dependency is interference. Thought is interference.
What is beyond thought?
Clarity. Direct perception.
Sight. This is the idea of sight, being able to see clearly what is.
Yes. Yes. Immersion in experience.
Cool. Now, this is obviously it can't be a mental exercise, right? You can't think your way into.
No, there's no exercises. There's no exercise.
Right, there's no exercises. So I know this is a prescriptive question, but I'm going to ask it anyway and hope that it gets us somewhere that is not. But how do we understand the world, the process, or not? There's no process. How do we see clearly?
By understanding that you're seeing through fog. And the more that one understands that he sees through fog, and the more unacceptable it is to him that he is seeing through fog, then the desire to see clearly will cultivate in him. And it is only then that he has a chance. Up until that time, he can ask how to see clearly all day long. The truth is, he's only asking for some sprinkles of curiosity. That's all he's interested in. He's not going to do it anyways. Unless something is heartfelt, nothing changes.
That's so true. Ooh. And once you're there and you understand where it is that you'd like to go and what it is that you want, right? Sincerely, you're serious about this. You can reach freedom, ultimate freedom.
Yes.
What is ultimate freedom?
Freedom from the self.
Freedom from the self. What does that mean to you?
The self is interference. The self is mind. The self is involuntary thought. The self is being shackled to a false identity. And when one is shackled to a false identity, he lives his entire life being subservient to that identity. And that is ultimate slavery. So freedom is a complete freedom from the self.
That's very interesting, because when you say this idea of slavery and kind of psychological slavery, economic slavery, all these different forms of imprisonment, whether physical or kind of mental, a lot of the kind of capitalistic society is predicated upon this notion, in my opinion. Especially as somebody who understands brands, how brands are built. A lot of them are predicated on this idea of like, I know that you want to get to this certain identity, and I'm going to associate a product with that identity. Now, what do you think? What do you think a world without? Ooh, this is going to be kind of a weird question. What do you think a world without this type of psychological enslavement looks like? Is that possible to ever come about? And there's another question, but I'll ask it after.
The transformation of one individual is a transformation of the world. If you approach things from the standpoint of the world, nothing happens. You must approach things from the standpoint of one individual. To seek world peace is an escape.
Yeah, I agree with that. You see that with in a lot of these cult kind of movements and these political things and other type things, and I think that idea goes back to the idea of the only one again, right? You cannot be the only one, obviously, if you're trying to change a group of people.
There's no group anything. The group anything is dead before it begins. There's no group enlightenment. There's no group meditation. That's just a game. Okay. If you're dead serious, you'll do it alone. Or you might have insights from another person, not prescriptive insights, but insights that might help with a soft hand and a light touch, guide you, back towards the truth about your essence. But there's no getting together with a group of 20 people and going to a retreat. That's literally a joke.
I 100% agree with you. Where I get a little bit confused is in this thing that pops into my mind, which is great things in humanity have happened through groups of people coming together to create. Where the idea may have
like what?
Okay.
Give me an example.
Sure. So all of the infrastructure around us, the roads, the electricity in the place that I am right now, the construction of this home that I'm living in was put together by a group of people. Where it may have come from the mind of one person, or the inspiration of one person, or the truth of one person, but it was put together by a group of people, which is where I struggle to see. I understand the truth that it is found in the individual, and it can't be found in a group.
Those are two different things. I mean, if you cut down half of a tree and you want to move that tree from one side of the forest to another, then one person does not have the physical strength to carry the tree, and so therefore he will employ others to assist him in a concerted effort to lift the tree. That's not a problem. I mean, that's a mechanical thing. That is the input of skill towards a common goal, right? Things that are mechanical are not the things that I'm talking about. When you build a house, one guy's hammering the nails, the other guy's putting up siding, the other guy's, making the driveway. That's not what I mean. And even in those things, each person is just doing his own task anyways. So even in those things, really, it's individual, because when each person holds the tree, he's only holding his part of the tree. And if he tries, the person who is holding his part of the tree, if he tries to help the other guy hold his part of the tree, he'll fall. So if the guy who's an expert at roofing, he goes and tries to build a driveway, he'll do an ineffective job at building the driveway. So even in the mechanical sense, it really isn't a group activity. It is from the outside looking at it, but if you look closely at it, it is individual. You don't have two guys hammering the same nail.
Yeah.
If you did, they
Yeah, you're
hammer each other.
absolutely right. Right. No, that brings a lot of clarity to the trouble that I was having. So thank you.
See, that's why I don't believe in teams. You know, even if you look at sports teams, okay?
Right.
Sports teams talk about sacrifice, that each person must sacrifice for the team. I fundamentally reject that idea, because what is the effect? The effect of that invariably is that what someone's talents are never respected and never used for the output of the team. It's viewed from a standpoint of fairness, right? Like, well, you should play defense sometimes, and you shouldn't, you know, hold the puck or the ball or the whatever it is. Everybody has an enormous capability. Each person has an enormous talent, and that person should be used just for that one talent. He shouldn't sacrifice for the team. The team will come together when each individual is used to his ultimate fruition. When each person sacrifices for the team, you have a crappy team.
That's true.
So that will be like the 10 guys who are holding that tree, and then each person's trying to hold more of the tree than the other guy to sacrifice. Well, he's just going to get tired quicker. And then he's not going to be able to even do his part. So I don't believe any of these things. There is no team.
Yeah, I agree with that. I that's why I chose to play golf as a younger person, to be honest with you. Now, so this is clearly a lie or a misconception within the business world as well, because you see all these groups of people that they say, hey, work on this team or work in this group, or we got to do this for the common good or what, right? So that in the business world, it's the same thing. Obviously, it's like, why are we putting together people in teams and to kind of work together? So in your mind,
so it's yeah. I'm cutting you off because I'm going to lose my response if I don't. Okay.
No, please do. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Listen, this is so disingenuous. I want to do it for the common good.
Right.
Okay. Why do you want to do it for the common good? I'm going to ask you that question, not necessarily that you want to do it for the common good, but what you think the person who does build the team building, all this just ridiculousness. What do you think they would say that why they are doing it for the common good?
I think that they would say that they want.
They've never been asked that. It's almost a sacrilegious question. Nobody would ever ask that. Nobody would ever say, "Why do you want to do it for the common good?" It's so accepted. That's so. How could you ask such a foundational? How could you attack such a foundational thing? Well, I'm attacking it. I'm asking it.
Right.
What do you think they would say?
Okay, so I think this is, well, I'm not going to give specific examples, but I think that the person would say that, oh, of course, the common good is because I want the good of the species, the good of humanity, or whatever it may be.
Fine. Why?
Well, inherently it's selfish. They want to feel good, of course.
That's right. Okay? So let's be honest. Let's cut the crap. Let's stop the nonsense. Quit the kumbaya. Look directly in the eye and let's speak the truth. Stop the nonsense. All right? The reason that you want it for the common good is because you want to feel good that you did something for the common good, right?
Yeah.
Now, there is no accusation there. There is no condemnation there. It is just the absolute truth. That isn't good, that isn't bad, that isn't wrong, that isn't right. It's nothing. It is the truth. Let's begin there. The only reason that you want to do for the common good is because it makes you feel good. And if doing for the common good made you feel bad, you wouldn't give 2 cents about the common good.
Absolutely.
All right? So let's speak up. Stop the nonsense. All right? Okay. So if you're doing it for yourself anyways, then wouldn't you do something that's more effective? The reason that you're doing it, well, if doing it for the common good is for you, and doing it for yourself is also for you,
absolutely, yeah.
Then if I've taken away the curtain that you're hiding behind, and you're exposed, now, wouldn't you now want to do things according to their effectiveness and no longer according to the scam of doing it for the common good, now that it's all been out in the open?
Right. Effectiveness over appearance.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Yes. That's good stuff. Okay. Cool.
Put things on the table. Put things on the table. Speak the truth. And the reason why people don't speak the truth is because everyone's self-righteous. This society is a self-righteous scam. Because the second that someone says that I'm doing it for the common good because that makes me feel good, society will come down on him and say, well, you're just being selfish. How dare you do it for yourself? That's why you can never win with society. This is why you must mentally leave society. You will never get anything from being rewarded by society or being condemned by society. You'll never get anything because whatever it'll give you with one hand, it'll take away with the other.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Which, of course, you know. But the idea that people, the social science kind of mumbo jumbo, which is mumbo jumbo, if we're talking the truth, is, in my opinion, mumbo jumbo. Will tell you that we are social beings. We depend upon one another and society and the group, and it's ingrained in our biology to kind of adhere to what the group wants or needs. And we want it to be approved.
Stop there. I got it. Let me respond. I'm gonna forget.
Absolutely.
Okay. I don't care what biology says. I don't care. No human being cares what biology says. Okay? The scientists need to just stay in their cubby holes and in their laboratories and do their test tubes and write their papers and get peer reviewed and progress from associate professor to professor and play their games. That's fine. Okay? Just don't bother me. Right. Let's talk truth. Human beings only care about how they feel. If biology says that, let's say biology says, okay, we're social human beings. Fine, let's say that. If I'm told by some scientist that it is your biological nature to be a social human being, but I gain more peace, more freedom, more joy, whatever, by being alone, What the hell do I care what my biology wants? I will leave my biology this afternoon. So in other words, I'm supposed to follow your biological paradigm and feel miserable, and at the end of my life say, well, I followed biology? I don't care. Now, let's look at the people who are social.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at the truth. You become social. Fine. You go to your parties, you talk about nonsense, you laugh about nonsense, right? You have your alcohol, you say whatever silliness you want to say, and you live it up. And then you leave. That high that you had is followed by a dramatic low. Therefore, you then must perpetuate that by seeking another high. Therefore, you will then engage again in a social event. That will be followed by a crash. And that low is simply unacceptable. The person can't feel that way, so he has to engage again. Okay. Now, someone might listen to what I just said, the scientist, for example, and might say, yes, see, we feel good in social environments. Okay. But that whole scenario is not sustainable. To me, the only thing that is real is the thing that is permanent. If I have to keep replenishing, it's false.
Ooh, that's good. Yeah.
So if I went to a social event and that lasted me forever, that's real. If I have to keep going back for a hit, that's false.
Yeah.
So I don't know if biology says that we're social or not. I couldn't care less. All I know is I'm not going to spend my entire life looking for hits.
Mm. That's absolutely right. And I can in my mind, like I think about things a lot through the lens of brand and business, and I can in my mind I immediately think about brands and businesses that try and get hits from customers, so to speak, instead of creating kind of something that's permanent in their lives or in their own lives, right? Because it's selfish at the end.
Yes. Selfish is not allowed. Yes.
Now I realize this idea of prescriptions, and in my mind, when you're talking about hits as false and permanence as truth, to me that sounds not like a prescription, but like a principle, which could be one and the same. I don't know. Maybe my intellect is trying to fool me. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But have you through your journey, have you learned principles of the truth?
Yeah, I guess you can call it what you want. I would say that, I look at the truth as something that works, and it works every time. And I have found to take it even deeper, I would say that the thing that might work or might not work is a prescription or a technique. And even when they do work, they don't work forever. So the work versus not work, the something might work versus it might not work, only applies to non-truths. The idea of working versus non-working never applies to truth, because truth never doesn't work. It's the truth. So I guess you can call that a principle if you'd like. You can summarize it that way if you'd like. But the truth is always real, and the truth is always permanent.
Now, we're talking the truth, so let's be truthful. Large reason why I asked you to be on the show and to participate in this discussion is, if we really drill down to it, is selfish on my part, of course, because I would like to understand the truth. If I'm honest with myself, I'm probably, I'm definitely not a free person in my own mind to a certain extent, and I'm certainly not the only one. But I would say that I seriously seek the truth. Now, I'd like to bring a close to this conversation with just, which is going to sound like a prescription, but as somebody who seeks to find the truth in my own life, and as somebody who would like to understand, it's going to sound weird, but how to bend the world at my will, the world around me. Where should I? Because should is a prescription, but what is the journey? Maybe is the question that I'm seeking to ask. I don't know. Perhaps
by discovering what is not okay with you.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. Now, in the context of a business or a brand, that would be the exact same question, of course.
I would say, who is for the business or the brand, it would be in your best interest to discover who it is that you want to be, because that destination will create the avenue.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Kapil, is there anything else that you'd like to discuss or get off of your, well, not off of your mind, but that you'd just like to express, or anything that you'd like to say?
No, just thank you for having me.
Okay.